This deals with the autonomic nervous system, which is chapter 14. Why do you need to know about the autonomic nervous system? Because a lot of medicines will have side effects on your patients, and you have to be able to figure out how that's going to affect if it interferes with the autonomic nervous system. Is it going to increase heart rate? Is it going to decrease heart rate? Increase blood pressure, decrease blood pressure. So you need to know how it's supposed to work normally so you can see what the effects of any chemicals, medication, drugs, etc. may have on it. So the autonomic nervous system, excuse me, consists of motor neurons that are going to innervate your smooth muscles, your cardiac muscle, and glands. They're going to make adjustments. It's trying to get the most efficient running of the body in particular circumstances at that particular time. So it may change depending on what's going on. It can adjust the blood flow to where you need it. You're just sitting back and relaxing. You need more of the blood flow going to the digestive system because you just ate a nice meal and you've got to break down all those foods to get the nutrients. You're maintaining a nice steady heart rate. Blood pressure is fine. Do you need to have a whole bunch of blood going to the skeletal system? No, you're not shutting off blood flow to one system to move it to another. You're just shunting it. You're adjusting the flow of it. All of this is done subconsciously. So you don't have to, okay, now we need more blood to the small intestines. Okay, now I need more blood to the kidneys. No, it's under subconscious control. That's why it's called automatic. So it's an automatic type of response. So that's the autonomic system. Totally involuntary. There's different names over the years that we have given it. It is classified under the peripheral nervous system because it's going to innervate areas, not the brain and not the spinal cord. As you can see here, it is divided into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic divisions. How does it compare to the somatic nervous system? Well, both of them will have motor fibers, but they're going to differ in the effector. What are they stimulating? What is the pathway of that? The target organ and the neurotransmitters. The somatic nervous system innervates your skeletal muscle. The autonomic nervous system is going to, as I said just a bit ago, innervate your cardiac muscle, which is found only in your heart, your smooth muscles, and your glands. In terms of the pathway, your somatic nervous system, the cell body is going to be in the central nervous system. You have a single thick myelinated axon that extends into the spinal nerve or the cranial nerve that then goes directly to the skeletal muscle. In the autonomic nervous system, there's a two neuron chain, if you will. There's a pathway there. You're going to have a preganglionic neuron. The cell body is going to be in the central nervous system. Then you're going to have a lightly myelinated preganglionic axon that extends down to the postganglionic neuron, which is outside of the central nervous system. And then the postganglionic axon is going to extend to that effector organ, whichever it may be, heart, smooth muscle, or gland. So it's like you have an extra step in there. In terms of neurotransmitter effects, somatic nervous system, the motor neuron is always going to be releasing acetylcholine as that neurotransmitter. The effect is always stimulatory. In the autonomic nervous system, your preganglionic fiber releases acetylcholine. The postganglionic fiber, when it innervates the effector, the cardiac, the smooth muscle, the gland, the neurotransmitter may be acetylcholine, but it may be norepinephrine. And the effect can either be stimulatory or inhibitory. It depends on the type of receptors. There is some overlap because in the brain it can regulate and coordinate the two systems so they work together. As we said earlier in other chapters, the spinal and cranial nerves, they often contain both somatic and autonomic nerve fibers going through them. So that they can be very well coordinated, and you can have adaptation. So you can have where active muscles, when you're exercising, require more oxygen. The autonomic nerves go, okay, there's more oxygen, they need more glucose, and so we need to increase the heart rate, we need to increase the respiration rate to get more oxygen and get that blood circulating faster. And so this is just a comparison of the motor neurons. Like I said, you've got just one long axon in the somatic versus your preganglionic and postganglionic. And then the neurotransmitter, it may be acetylcholine, but it could also be norepinephrine. And then the effect. It's always stimulatory with somatic, but autonomic, it could also be inhibitory. Depends on the situation. So there's two divisions of the autonomic nervous system. There's the parasympathetic division and the sympathetic. The parasympathetic is often called rest and relax or rest and digest. They have different phrases for it, but basically it's promoting just your regular maintenance. You're conserving energy. You are just sitting and chilling. Hopefully what you're doing right now. The sympathetic division is going to be mobilizing the body activity. Now, most of your visceral organs are innervate. They have nerves from both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, but they're going to cause opposite effects. And the whole thing, remember, keep in mind, you're always wanting to maintain homeostasis here. So I say parasympathetic division, we look at this first. It's rest and digest. So you're just kind of trying to keep energy use low while you're still carrying out your activities. You need to digest your food. You need to carry out in the kidneys, the filtration processes. So a person's just relaxing. Heart rate, blood pressure, respiration rates, these should be, and we're talking about a normal condition, should be, low. Activity along your digestive tract, your gastrointestinal tract should be relatively high. You just ate. You've got to start breaking, your food down, whatever you ate a donut. You need to start breaking it down. The kidneys are functioning at the regular rate. The pupils, they're constricted. Maybe you're reading your notes, you're looking at this PowerPoint. So if you're, say, sitting looking at your laptop, your eyes are focused for that shorter distance. The sympathetic division, this is what's known as fight or flight. It's for more active levels, expending energy. Most people think of it more of crisis situation. Now, this is going to be activated when you're exercising because it's going to increase the heart rate, breathing rate, etc. It certainly is activated when you are put into a situation that is, your body perceives that you're in a crisis situation. It could be a life and death situation. Typically what you'll see is that the heart rate is going to increase. Your respiration rate is going to increase. Why? Because if you're in a situation that your body is perceiving you may not survive, it's life or death. You're perceiving that you're in a crisis situation. If you have to run, that's going to involve skeletal muscle contraction. If you have to fight, that's going to involve skeletal muscle contraction. And what do you need for muscle contraction? You need a lot of oxygen. You need a lot of glucose. So that muscle contraction requires energy, it requires ATP. And how do you generate that ATP? You break down glucose. But to break down the glucose most efficiently, you need oxygen. So that's why your respiration rate increases, is your airways are going to dilate. So you increase the rate, you increase the diameter of the airways so that with each breath you breathe harder, you're getting more air in so you can get more oxygen. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases so you can get that blood moving. You got to get it moving through the lungs to the rest of the body to get that oxygen. You got to get it to those skeletal muscles. You need it now. 10 minutes from now, you might be dead. And that's going to be too late. So you need it now. So respiration rate increases, blood rate, or heart rate increases, blood pressure increases. All of that is to get that oxygen in the blood down to the skeletal muscles where you need it so they can contract as needed. Other things that will happen, typically your mouth tends to get dry. You get kind of sweaty palms. Your pupils will dilate. Why? To get more light going in so you can visually see. You'll notice you become very much aware of all of your surroundings. Do you know where an exit is in case you have to run? Do you know where the danger is coming from? You become very, very like fine-tuned. You're aware of every sound, everything around you. Any extraneous sounds tend to fade out. It's just right here that I need for survival. There is an adjustment that is made in terms of, like I say, the blood flow. The blood vessels that are supplying blood to the skeletal muscles tend to dilate to increase that blood flow there. It will constrict the blood vessels to areas like your digestive tract, your urinary tract. Does it shut it off? No, but it shunts it to other areas. The blood volume hopefully is staying the same. You're just shifting where the main flow is going to go. Obviously, you cannot shut off flow to the digestive tract or the kidneys because you can't have those organs dying. But you can reduce the amount of flow there and send it where you need it. Where do you need it? You need it in the lungs, you need it in the heart, you need it in the skeletal muscles. Why don't you need it in the digestive tract? Once again, well, if you ate a donut an hour ago and now you're in a life and death situation, it doesn't really matter about you breaking down the glucose in the donut in your stomach and in the intestines, because you might not survive. In terms of some of the anatomical differences between the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions, the site or the origin of it. The parasympathetic fibers tend to originate in the brain and in the sacrospinal cord area. The sympathetic fibers are thoracic and lumbar. They originate in the thoracic and the lumbar areas of the spinal cord. The relative lengths of the fibers, the parasympathetic tend to have very long preganglionic and short postganglionic. The sympathetic is the reverse. They have short preganglionic but long postganglionic. And then where's the location of the ganglia? The parasympathetic ganglia are located either in or near the visceral effector organ, and the sympathetic is closer to the spinal cord. And so this is showing some of the differences. Like I say, the location of them. And this table also shows the comparison between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. And what are some of the effects? Like I was saying, the pupil when the sympathetic is stimulated, it's going to dilate to get more light in, dry mouth, etc. So it goes through all the different organs, and once again, you'll notice it's usually antagonistic effects or opposing effects that you will see. And like the gallbladder, if you look at that, for the parasympathetic, it's excitatory. It's going to trigger the gallbladder to expel some of the bile that's stored there that's needed for lipid digestion. But in a sympathetic, if that is stimulated, it's going to inhibit it. You don't need to worry about getting bile in the small intestines to break the lipids down. That's not your main problem right now. You have more other issues to have to deal with. What are some disorders of the autonomic nervous system? There are several disorders that involve inefficient control of the smooth muscle activity, high blood pressure or hypertension. Basically, what's happening is there's kind of an overactive part of the vasoconstrictor response to stress. The heart's having to work harder. Um, you can treat this with medication. This is often known as a silent killer because initially when a person starts to have hypertension, there often are no outward signs of it. And so they may have it for quite a while before they even realize it. Raynaud's disease is where there's vasoconstriction. The blood vessels are constricting in the fingers and the toes. The digits will turn kind of pale and then eventually cyanotic. They're not getting basically enough blood. You can treat that with something that's going to dilate